Hello, campers. Grab your marshmallows and gather around the true crime campfire. We're your camp counselors. I'm Katie.
And I'm Whitney.
And we're here to tell you a true story that is way stranger than fiction. We're roasting murderers and marshmallows around the true crime campfire. I'm sure most of you have heard some variant of the phrase, "Nobody wants to see how the sausage gets made," which refers to the often messy procedures behind getting things done in, say, business or politics. But it's also a literal truth that most of us don't want to see how sausage gets made, and that goes double if the person making it cuts corners and develops a wildly aggressive attitude to any kind of government oversight. This is The Sausage Kingdom, The Crimes of Stuart Alexander.
So, campers, for this one, we're in San Leandro, California, June 21st, 2000. In the small factory at the corner of Williams and Washington, shots rang out. The bodies of 3 health inspectors hit the concrete floor. A moment later, Stuart Alexander, the self-styled Sausage King of San Leandro, came bursting out of the factory doors, a gun in each hand, screaming, "I'm gonna get you," to the 4th health inspector, who took off running down the street as bullets zipped through the air around him. It was a scene of total madness and terror, and like we do anytime something like this happens, people wondered, how the hell did we get here? When you think of California, chances are you think of the coast, the beaches and big cities, but it also has an enormous agricultural industry, bigger than that of any individual European nation. A lot of food gets made there, which leads to particular towns and regions specializing in specific things. And that leads us to San Leandro, a small Bay Area city that proudly declares itself the sausage capital of California.
I have to wonder what it is about sausage that lends itself to creating, land and royalty. I haven't heard of any corn chip dukes or duchies, but we've all heard of Abe Froman, Sausage King of Chicago.
Yeah, Chicago did have a real sausage king at one point. I don't know if that's his name. I just remember that from the Ferris Bueller movie, but Chicago did have a sausage king, and he was heavily suspected of having murdered his wife. I don't know if he was ever convicted for it, but the theory was that he murdered her and put her in the, in the sausage. So yeah, it's a storied history of sausage royalty. A lot of Portuguese immigrants settled in the East Bay and brought with them the linguiça, a pork sausage made with garlic and paprika, which soon caught on big time in local markets. Small, family-owned sausage factories sprang up in the city, among them Santos Linguiça, founded by Pia Santos and her husband Antonio in 1921. First from their basement, then when demand grew, they bought the property next door and turned it into a factory. Santos Linguiça was a staple of the local sausage economy. Sorry, that's just such a funny phrase, the local sausage economy. And really took off from the 1950s onward when Pia's grandson Herman took over the operation. Herman Tweedy Alexander had been born in San Leandro and grew up in the Santos Linguiça factory just as much as he grew up at home. He was a larger-than-life character, expelled from high school for getting into fights, then joining the army and learning to speak fluent Japanese. By the time he took over the family business from his father, Tweedy was kind of a fancy man. Snazzy suits, shiny shoes, a pencil mustache, and slicked back hair, always smiling and with a twinkle in his eye. He looked like he was halfway between a game show host and a mid-level wise guy in the Corleone family. The business flourished under Tweedy. He had a Rolls-Royce, a Jaguar, a Lincoln, an RV, and a boat. It's easier to make big money if you think of paying taxes as something that happens to other people. Tweedy did all his business in cash, which made it easier to hide things from the government and made sure that all his properties were seriously undervalued so as to slim down the property taxes. Every night he'd be out eating or gambling with judges and politicians, people he'd grown up with and played golf with every weekend. At Christmas, he'd throw big parties at the factory, open to the whole town, with free food and beer and a jazz band from San Francisco. He was an important, popular man in San Leandro. Tweety and his wife Shirley had 3 boys, Stephen, Stuart, and Stanley, and the family lived in a big house on Bancroft Avenue. Tweety wasn't there much, and his parenting didn't go much further than either laughing at his kids or smacking them around the head. Great. Given the little sketch we've given you of Tweety, does he sound like the kind of guy who always keeps his pants on when he's away from home? Yeah, Tweety did not always keep his pants on. He screwed around every chance he got, running off to Reno with his buddies for gambling and girls. He and Shirley got divorced, apparently with a pretty loosey-goosey custody arrangement. Tweety bought Shirley a house as part of the divorce, and the boys moved in with her. But after a year or so, the oldest, Stephen, decided he preferred staying with his dad and just moved back in. The other 2 boys followed within a few weeks. Tweety didn't have any interest in looking after 3 teenage boys, so he asked an old girlfriend, Betty, to move in and basically be a surrogate mother. His current girlfriend, Peggy O'Neill, said later, "Women loved him. All his exes loved him. Christ, even men loved him. If you were Tweety's girl, you were somebody. On the other hand, there were all these women that you knew he was going out with." I'm sure Betty did her best, but the boys ran wild, especially the younger 2, Stuart and Stanley. One of our main sources for this story was Bud Hazelcorn's article for San Francisco magazine, The Sausage King, and a childhood friend of the boys told him, "It was nothing for Stuart or Stanley to steal from you. They'd come in your house and take things, your basketball or your bike. If you fought back, you had Stephen to contend with. No matter what they did, if you complained, you'd pay double with your fists."
This was very much a 1970s macho neighborhood, and Stephen acting as an enforcer for his shitty younger brothers didn't diminish anyone's opinion of him. It was just what you did for family. Stephen was popular, a friendly, good-looking kid, very much like his pops. Tweety thought so too. He meant for Stephen to take over the business after him. But it wasn't to be. Stephen loved motorcycles. In May of 1977, when he was 18 years old, he was out riding one day on Lake Chabot Road, a windy road by the shoreline. He got in a wreck, a head-on collision with another vehicle. He was in a coma for 2 weeks before he died. Tweety was inconsolable and barely left his house for a year. He told his girlfriend Peggy, "I know I'm not supposed to have favorites, but he was my favorite. When Stephen died, I died too."
Oof.
Yeah, oof all around. The other 2 kids, Stuart and Stanley, each had their problems. The trouble they'd gotten into when they were young was all Stuart's fault. Stanley was a sweet-natured kid, but he was one of life's natural followers. He'd soon develop addictions to both alcohol and heroin, but he got clean when his parents sent him to a rehab center in Hawaii. Stuart, by contrast, was a teetotaler and a hard worker at the factory where he'd been employed since he was a kid. Maybe too hard of a worker. He could get hyper-focused and intense, and he had a hair-trigger temper. You could piss him off just by looking at him. So, unsurprisingly, Stuart and Tweety argued all the time. Mostly because that was just the kind of person Stuart was, but in particular, he was always bugging Tweety to tell him the secret recipe for the marinade that made the Santos Linguiça sausage so popular. The recipe wasn't complicated. It was just wine vinegar, paprika, garlic, salt, pepper, and water. But of course, it was the exact quantities that mattered, and Tweety kept those to himself. "You don't need to know that," he'd tell Stuart. That doesn't sound like someone who's keen on the idea of passing the business to his son.
It's a need-to-know basis, kid. Like, first of all, huh? What? So that really tells you a lot, I think, about their relationship. Because if he doesn't want to tell his son the recipe, then surely it's because he thinks he's going to take it and go somewhere and start his own thing, right? Why else would you keep it from him? So that's a serious lack of trust. Dang.
And I don't think he was wrong.
He was probably not. No, we're going to see. Stuart is an asshole. So,
yeah. There's no way to know if it was about the marinade, but one time Tweety and Stuart got into a full-on fist fight on the factory floor. Tweety threw Stuart out and told him to never come back. Stuart yelled that he would come back with more money and more property than Tweety could ever dream of.
Yeah, that must have been fun for the workers. Awkward. Of course, if I worked there, I'd be there with a bag of popcorn from the break room vending machine, just trying to overhear every word. Because, sometimes the only bearable thing about work is the gossip. I know y'all know what I'm talking about. Like, look, if I have to give this damn place the best years of my life, I'm going to make sure I get every drop of tea. I want to know whose husband Sharon's after this month. I want to know whose ex-wife is in Cancun with her new boyfriend that's 15 years younger than she is. I want it all. All.
Stuart's first step in sticking it to his dad was to buy some property with a loan from his dad. Kind of takes the stickiness off the sticking it to him, I think. Lots of family fights involve big dramatic declarations that everyone silently agrees never happened. And Tweety was happy to bankroll his son's start as a property developer. Stuart also borrowed money from Tweety's friends and heavily mortgaged his property deals. He was copying his dad with all of that, but unless you were the IRS, Tweety always paid his debts. And Stuart wasn't real enthusiastic about that part of the business. He screwed somebody over on almost every debt he had. One notable exception was a plumber who he owed $17,000. That guy sued and got his money, which I'm guessing had more to do with him being 6'8" and 300 pounds than any legal arguments.
Jesus.
Stuart had two big problems. First of all, he hated to let anything go. If he had a property that was losing him money and the best option was clearly to sell it, he wouldn't. He'd just let unpaid mortgages and other debts rack up until it was foreclosed on, then be furious at the foreclosure.
And anytime he was told he had to do something, he reacted like a pissed off teenager. He'd just dig in his heels and get mad. If you told this guy he had to keep breathing air to survive, his reaction would just be shut his mouth till he went blue in the face and passed out. Like, contrarian to the core. So Stuart was a dud as a business boy and clearly wasn't up to the task of running Santos Linguiça. But that was a problem for the future. Tweety was just in his 50s, active and healthy, until he wasn't. He was diagnosed with an aggressive lymphoma and died in May of 1993 at just 59 years of age. His will explicitly described the funeral procession he wanted, so his rolls and 17 limos packed with his buddies and girlfriends drove by the places he loved. His home on Bancroft, the Santos Linguiça factory, and the golf course. I guess it would have been asking a little too much to have everyone drive to the casinos in Reno. The day after he died, before the funeral had even happened, Stuart and Stanley were bugging Tweety's lawyer about the will. They would split almost all of the estate between them, which pissed Stuart off because apparently he thought his family was a medieval royal kingdom where the oldest son gets everything. The estate included millions of dollars in property, and the boys also inherited about $300,000 in debt. With everything else, this wasn't really a huge deal, but Stuart, predictably, was furious. As long as he didn't spend like an idiot, he was set for life, but all he cared about was what he was losing, not what he'd gained. I know people like this. Do y'all know people like this? Just, it's always glass half empty no matter what. Tweety's will let his girlfriend, Peggy O'Neill, stay in the house on Bancroft for 10 years rent-free, and also gave her the deed to the 1973 Corvette he'd given her as a gift. And this drove Stuart nuts. He wanted that house. He didn't care so much about the car, except that he didn't want Peggy to have it. One day he just stole it, right in front of her. She sued him, but he just wouldn't give it up, despite court orders and a $50,000 fine for failing to appear, which was at least 5 times the value of the flippin' car. He broke this Corvette down to its parts and buried it on a friend's land. Also, Peggy wouldn't have it. I think I've told y'all this story before about this kid I used to nanny for when I was in college. This kid was the worst. Like, I wonder sometimes about what he's doing now because he'd be a grown adult. I'm sure he's still a walking nightmare. His mom was super nice, okay? She was a lawyer. She worked really hard. She tried really hard to parent him, but they were divorced, and his dad was an asshole, just thoroughgoing to the core of his soul. And he would undo every bit of good parenting that this poor woman tried to do. And this kid was such a little prick. We would have his friends over, and they would just be playing together and stuff. Anytime the friend would want a snack or something, this little shit would take it from him. No, mom said you couldn't have any food, which is total bullshit. his mom was like, yeah, let them have whatever they want, you know. But this kid would say, no, mom said no food. One time I saw this child take a Rice Krispie treat out of his friend's hand and throw it in the trash, just so his friend wouldn't have it. And that is Stuart. That's Stuart burying that Corvette on a friend's land. Like, what is wrong with your brain, man? This is somebody who badly, badly needs, like, extensive therapy. But, of course, he wasn't going to get it.
Hey campers, Katie here. As I've gotten older, it's become less acceptable to look like you're just waiting until it's time to go to the gym. So I've tried to make a better effort to look like a person every day, and it's amazing how it makes me feel. Quince has made this process easy and fun. The fabrics feel luxurious, everything fits great, and speaking as a tall lady, that's a huge compliment. And they specialize in the best kinds of basics. Your favorite t-shirt, your favorite jeans, your favorite sundress. The price is right too. The linen pants, dresses, and tops start at just $30, and they look and feel great. Everything at Quince is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They work directly with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality and craftsmanship, not brand markup. The Tencel Fit and Flare jersey dress has been one of my absolute favorite spring and summer staples since I got it. The fabric is buttery soft, and it fits like a dream. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/campfire for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/campfire for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/campfire.
Starting or growing your own business can be intimidating and lonely at times. Your to-do list may feel endless with new tasks, and lists can easily begin to overrun your life. So finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything as a built-in business partner can be a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US. From household names like Gymshark, Rare Beauty, and Heinz, to brands just getting started. Shopify has hundreds of ready-to-use templates that can help you build a beautiful online store that matches your brand's style. And you can tackle all the important tasks in one place, from inventory to payments to analytics and more. No need to save multiple websites or try to figure out what platform is hosting the tool that you need. And if people haven't heard about your brand, you can get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you, with easy-to-run email and social media campaigns to reach customers wherever they're scrolling or strolling. Start your business today with the industry's best business partner, Shopify, and start hearing. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/realm. Go to shopify.com/realm. That's shopify.com/realm.
Stuart had his girlfriend Eve sit across the street from the house to spy on Peggy. God, poor Peggy, Jesus. He made threatening phone calls in the middle of the night. In December, Peggy's dog died. It looked like it had been hit by a car, but she said that not long after, Dave Catelli, a friend of Stuart's, came to her house and said, "What happened to your dog is going to happen to you if you don't back off this lawsuit." Holy shit. Catelli died young, and Stuart has kept his mouth shut, so whether the two of them had anything to do with what happened to the dog, or if they just took advantage of an accident, who knows? I hope it was an accident. God, that's awful. Peggy, anyway, eventually had enough and moved out. The executor of Tweedy's estate sold the house to Stuart. He finally had it in his hands after all that effort terrorizing Peggy, but he couldn't keep it up. And after just a few years, he sold the place for $100,000 less than its value. God, he's an idiot. Stuart wanted everything for himself. A year after Tweedy's death, he bought Stanley's half of the estate at a fraction of its value. If his younger brother expected any kind of gratitude, he was sadly mistaken. Stuart immediately evicted him from the house next to the factory, where Stanley had been staying, and said he'd kill Stanley if he ever set foot in the factory again. This is his brother. Stanley moved in with a friend who remembered him crying and saying, "Why does Stuart treat me like this? We're all we have left in the world. God, that's so sad." If anyone told him to stand up to his older brother, he'd say, "You don't know Stuart. He's crazy." Since he'd come back from rehab in Hawaii, Stanley had been living in Pennsylvania and staying sober. Being back in San Leandro with his old friends and his crazy brother was not good for him, and he was soon using heroin again. He had a few arrests for petty theft and drug possession, and then one for a not-so-petty theft when he was caught stealing computers from San Leandro High School. He got 30 days in jail at the start of 1995. When he got out, he was planning to move back to Pennsylvania, but first he had some business with Stuart. He had papers signing over some more of the estate to Stuart, but in return, Stanley wanted a guaranteed share of the proceeds when Stuart sold the property. Stuart said, "No dice, surprise, surprise," and Stanley angrily stalked out. He was set to leave town the next day. When a friend called at about 9:30 and asked if she'd see Stanley before he left, he said, "No, I have to clear up some business with Stuart."
Just after 2 a.m. the next morning, a Union Pacific train from Oakland rounded the turn, and the engineer conductor and a student engineer all saw Stanley Alexander sitting on the left-hand rail in the white glare of the headlight. The engineer laid on the brakes and the air horn, but Stanley was much too close for the train to stop.
Oh, man.
He turned and looked straight into the light. He never even flinched, the engineer said. Just before the train reached him, Stanley stretched out and lay fully across the tracks. Whether he had gone to see Stuart and what they might have talked about, no one knows. Some of Stanley's friends would come to believe he'd been murdered, doped up by Stuart and put on the tracks. But I think that's pretty far-fetched. Elaborate schemes like that are incredibly difficult to pull off, and Stuart Alexander was not a finesse kind of guy. The truth is almost certainly what the authorities determined it to be. Stanley killed himself. This is almost like a mini Von Erich family. You know, the wrestling family where all the sons died by suicide? It's horrible.
It's so sad, God.
Stuart was about as moved by his brother's suicide as he had been about his father's death, which is to say, not a lot. He was more concerned about his money. He was always more concerned about his money, but that didn't stop him spending it like an ancient Babylonian king with an impulse control problem. He bought vintage cars, a ridiculous number of guns, and blew tens of thousands of dollars on sex workers. Like, apparently, there's money in being sausage kings.
Oh, yeah. Sausage royalty cleanup.
I like sausages, but man. He also bought expensive pet pigs, which seems a little weird when your whole livelihood is making sausage, but there you go.
It's so weird. I can't imagine.
But like, if you talk to farmers, that's like, they get a little bit twisty about their animals. Like my cousin named her show goats dinner and breakfast and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, well my brother has chickens and they're all named after, like one of them's Nugget, one of them's Alfredo. Like they're just egg laying hens. They're not going to get eaten, but like yeah. But
no,
how
these
do you
were
bond with
food
an animal?
goats.
And then I just don't understand. Like when your business is killing that same animal, it's odd. I don't know.
I think you just get to a point. I think you and I are so removed from it.
Yeah.
That it's different. But when you're in it, when you're literally elbows deep, and I mean, Stuart is a freak.
Yeah.
Stuart is a freak. But I think farmers are also just, they're in it. So it's like their reality.
So there's a disconnect. It doesn't seem like the same thing. I don't get it, but yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're right.
Again, Stuart is like the one that we're making fun of, but like farmers are different. Stuart we're making fun of. Farmers, we love you.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, where you can make fun of, like, it's like, don't bean soup us. That's what I'm saying, is like, I'm making fun of Stuart, but I would never make fun of my cousin.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. Right. We don't want any friendly fire over here. My granddaddy was a farmer, and I mean, I can remember he would have bonds with some of his cows and stuff. I don't know. Mm-hmm. It's weird. No. And he'd send the rest of them off to the slaughterhouse. Like, what? It's so strange.
It's like that Supreme Court justice that's like, I don't know the difference, but I know there's a difference.
Yeah.
And he's talking about porn. I don't know the difference, but I know there's a difference. He'd never taken care of the debt he'd inherited from Tweedy and borrowed more money on the estate to pay it. Then he had a sudden new obsession and borrowed more money to buy a big corner building close to the factory. He remodeled it himself and proclaimed it would be a new center for the Mother Mary Ann Wright Foundation, which distributes food and clothes to the needy. But not only didn't he get permits for this venture, he'd never even applied for them, and the city wouldn't let him open the center. It's like when I was in like second grade, I decided I wanted to start a band, except I couldn't play any instruments. I could play the flute, but like I wasn't Jethro Tull, you know? So like we went to my friend's house and we started writing songs, except we couldn't play any instrument. So like it wasn't a band. We were coming up with band names, but it wasn't a band.
You could have just been a cappella.
It was like that.
I mean, barbershop?
Whitney, you've heard me sing.
It's not as bad as you think it is, but I take your point.
Okay. To Stuart, of course, this wasn't his own fault because nothing ever was. It was the city's. His attitude about life was that he should be allowed to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, and anything that stood in the way of that just pissed him off. It was his same old problem of refusing to do anything that was demanded of him. He had the same problem at the sausage factory, where the health inspectors noted infraction after infraction that Stuart just ignored, until eventually they shut him down.
Aye.
These were all for minor things, but they added up, and they were things you definitely want done, like making sure the meat reached a temperature to kill bacteria, or blocking gaps that let flies into the processing rooms, because flies lead to maggots.
Yeah, I feel like I want my sausage makers to have a staunch anti-maggot policy. I feel like that's a small ask.
Just a slightly small ask, I think.
Yeah, this really should be basic stuff.
After the city shut him down, Stuart had his production manager, Larry Torres, start addressing every one of the infractions, with the city allowing the factory to remain open. It took almost a year, but Larry got everything into shape, and right after he'd finished, Stuart accused him of stealing $40 and Larry quit immediately. I'm guessing Stuart had somehow started associating Larry with the city authorities, which was why he was such a dick to him, but good job, man. You drove off the person who knows how to fix things.
$40. $40. Dear God. Stuart had been working at Santos Linguiça in one capacity or another since he was 8 years old. He was bored of it and started only showing up every now and again. The factory continued on without him, mainly due to two experienced employees, both Portuguese immigrants, the butcher Jose, known as Joe the Boner, and his sister-in-law Laura Santos, who made the marinade. In fact, since Tweedy's death, Laura was the only person who knew how to make the marinade. Both Joe and Laura had worked for Tweedy for decades. They were now both in their 70s, both absolutely vital to the whole operation, and Stuart made no effort at all to have them train up somebody to learn their skills. After 75 years of operation, he was running Santos Linguiça into the ground. Stuart's main focus now was on how he was being screwed over by the state and the city. He hadn't paid state unemployment insurance, he ignored zoning laws, and he ignored the fines from these until they got thicker and thicker. All of this was his own fault, but he was incapable of seeing it like that. His solution to this imaginary harassment by authority was simple. He'd become mayor of San Leandro. Dun, 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 dun,
he was already the sausage king.
I know, right? Like it's a demotion, if anything. And this just cracked old Laura Santos up. She said, "How are you going to run the city? You can't even run your business." Oh, man. Way to keep the respect of your employees there, Stu. Stuart wasn't much of a forward planner. Like, being mayor of a small city isn't going to shield your business from state inspectors. If anything, it's just going to put more of a target on your back. Not that there was any chance in hell of Stuart actually being elected. He didn't make a terrible impression initially, with an argument that the city was too focused on attracting big businesses and not enough on long-standing local operations. That's the kind of stuff that's going to get people nodding in agreement anywhere in the country. But it didn't take long for the local press to start looking into the backgrounds of the mayoral candidates, and as soon as they did, Stuart was sunk. One of the things the city had been going after him for was using his backyard as a dump. It was full of the skeletons of wrecked cars and old appliances. In 1997, 1 year before the election, Stuart had noticed an elderly neighbor taking pictures of all the trash in his yard. He went right over there, grabbed the camera, and punched the old man in the face, knocking him down where Stuart kicked the shit out of him. The only reason he wasn't in jail was because he paid this guy thousands of dollars to settle out of court. Stuart came third out of 4 candidates. Shout out to Lou Filipovich, the only person he beat, an elderly man who apparently ran for every available office after he retired. You gotta have hobbies in retirement, I guess. In early 2000s, things began to go downhill fast for Santos Linguiça. In January, a health inspector showed up early and cited Stuart for falsifying his daily sanitation reports, which wasn't hard to figure out because Stuart had apparently managed to fill out and sign that day's report before he'd even shown up to work. Magic. Stuart got mad and threw the inspector out. The next day, 2 compliance officers from the Department of Agriculture showed up, and I don't think it's ever a good sign when an investigation into you gets bumped up to the federal level. Not good. The 2 officers asked to speak with Stuart. He came out of his office and barked at them, "I don't have time to see you. Get out of my face." Good God, man. And then he stalked back into the office like they would just go away. One of the compliance officers, Jean Hillary, asked Laura Santos, "Is he always like that?" Laura said, "Yep, most of the time." I love Laura Santos. If you're processing meat and you don't get inspected daily, you can't operate legally. So Santos Linguiça shut down. Laura Santos decided it was a good time to retire, despite Stuart's pleading that she keep working. With her went the marinade recipe. It's not clear if Stuart just asked her what it was, but I kind of suspect he didn't just because he hated anything that made him feel like he wasn't in charge of everything. There are plenty of marinade recipes, of course, but Santos Linguiça, if it ever started production again, would be a different thing now.
For the other big problem the factory was facing, we have to go back to 1992 and 93, when hundreds of people got sick from eating undercooked Jack-in-the-Box burgers infected with E. coli. 4 kids died, and in 1996, legislation was passed tightening inspection of meat processing and food preparation. The biggest companies had to comply first, while small operations like Santos Linguiça were given until January 25th, 2000 to get new protocols in place. Stuart just didn't bother.
Oh my God.
The USDA were trying to make the transition easy for everyone. They kept getting in touch with Stuart and telling him, just take these classes, do the paperwork, explain your process, and you're golden. This story has often been simplified down to Stuart being furious at the new regulations because the changes would mean he'd have to change his curing methods, and that would change the flavor of Santos Linguiça. But that ship had already sailed when Laura Santos quit, taking Tweety's marinade recipe with her. And the main problem inspectors found at the factory was that the sausages weren't reaching the 140 degrees required to kill the parasites that would cause trichinosis, a truly horrible and potentially fatal disease.
Oh my God. I knew a guy who got this when I was a kid. It was gnarly as hell. Like everybody was talking about it in our town. Even a mild case of this stuff makes you want to pray for death. Like it starts with just awful diarrhea and vomiting and cramps. And it can end with freaking neurological issues or myocarditis and any one of a dozen other just god-awful things. This is not to be fucked with, Stuart, you imbecile.
Oh, come on. It was just too much trouble for him, Whitney. Poor guy.
Yeah, evidently he was too busy getting his own sausage serviced.
Yeah, doesn't trichinosis, doesn't it like eat your brain or something?
It's
like
so
it's like
bad.
really
It's
awful.
One of the worst things
like,
in the world. Just Google it. It's horrific.
Yeah. It's like worms literally eat your brain. Like that's like I'm not trying to like it's horrible. Stuart claimed this demand was unreasonable because Santos Linguiça had always been perfectly safe, and it was impossible to reach that temperature with their traditional wood fire curing method. Fire is too cold to get the sausage hot enough. That's what he was claiming.
This guy
by
would
the way.
argue with a statue. He would argue with anything. Oh my God, dude, just do it.
Fire too cold. That's what he's saying.
Fire too cold.
The thing is, Tweety had always managed to get the meat that temperature. He always put on a little show for the health inspector, leaping over the fire in the smokehouse to grab a link to be tested. It wasn't until Stuart took over that the temperature dropped. And this was probably deliberate. Lower temperatures meant bigger sausages, and they were sold by the pound, so bigger profits. And if the meat wasn't as safe as it used to be, well, that wasn't Stuart's problem.
I hate this guy. He reminds me of this subhuman nightmare creature that I saw one time on American Greed. That show is great. If you don't watch it, you should. This guy owned a peanut factory, and he knew 100% that his cost-cutting bullshit was contaminating the crap out of the peanuts. Kids were dying after eating their peanut butter and stuff, and he couldn't have given less of a damn as long as he was making money. That's all he gave a shit about. That's all he gave a shit about. Just making money, cutting corners. Just what is wrong with these people? Oh, God almighty. I don't get it. I will never get it. I hate it. And go fuck yourself if you're one of those people.
This reminds me of something I heard of on a podcast. I think it was actually the Cracked podcast, the Cracked magazine podcast. Back when the Cracked website was actually really good. And is and this is before the blank theory was a terrible TikTok thing. It's like, it's the monkey sphere theory, and how like the human brain is only capable of caring about like 100 people. Like,
okay.
Well, like,
what?
Okay, you break a vase in your house, right? You sweep it up and you put it in your trash can. Okay. Because you're afraid that your cats or your husband or your niece or whatever are going to cut themselves on the vase, right? Mm-hmm. But what about the trash guy?
I worry about the trash guy too.
I worry.
Absolutely.
I do too.
Yeah.
I always worry about the trash guy. I get so concerned. Or like, I worry about like I have somebody come and deep clean my house every few weeks. I worry about her too. I always worry about like I can't imagine not worrying about people in the world.
I know.
And I know that makes me sound like fucking dope. Like,
no, it's just normal. That's normal, right? Like, we're not weird. That's normal. I think some people are just single-mindedly focused on money, and it is one of the great cancers of humanity that drive. Ugh.
You're going to hate Stuart more when I tell you this. He dubbed himself the Sausage King, and at one point had a gold jacket made with it stitched on the chest. More proof of our theory that anyone who gives themselves a nickname is a preposterous dork with no morals.
Honey, your dad was the Sausage King. Get over yourself.
God, can you imagine Tweety rolling in his grave?
Spinning.
I hope Tweety, by the way, was buried with little mummified sausages. And he's just rolling in there with the sausages, little linguices.
What a bizarre image. Oh, my God.
Well, he was the Sausage King.
He
was. Little mummified, sent off to the underworld.
In the sausage
with what he loved.
Sausage pyramid. We're sorry, Tweety. Rest in peace. Rest in peace.
No, it's respectful. That's... Yeah, honestly, yeah. The IRS probably was like, he died right before the IRS was kicking down the door. I know he did.
Yeah, that's always the way.
The truth was, he only saw the factory as something to squeeze money out of.
Yeah.
Tweety had always kept it clean, but under Stuart, the place got dirty.
No one goes to Hank's for spreadsheets. They go for a darn good pizza. Lately, though, the shop's been quiet, so Hank decides to bring back the $1 slice. He asks Copilot in Microsoft Excel to look at his sales and costs and help him see if he can afford it. Copilot shows Hank where the money's going and which little extras make the dollar slice work. Now Hank has a line out the door. Hank makes the pizza, Copilot handles the spreadsheets. Learn more at m365copilot.com/work.
This is Euphoria Calvin Klein, the new Elixir collection, featuring 3 Parfum Intense scents, inspired by a unique orchid accord, paired with vanilla, each with its own distinct attitude, each with its own universe. Bold Elixir, sensual, woody, addictive. Magnetic Elixir, sweet and romantic like a lingering touch. Solar Elixir, a radiant expression of joy. Ultra concentrated for amplified impact and lasting power. Find your Euphoria. Discover the Euphoria Elixir collection by Calvin Klein.
This story has sometimes been presented as Stuart being outraged at overreaching regulations that would change the nature of his family's linguiça. But he'd already changed it. Mm-hmm. If anything, the regulations would force him to go back to the way Tweety operated, when Santos Linguiça had been most successful.
Now, this was not about him trying to preserve the purity of his ancestral sausage. It was about making a quick buck, and most notably, it was about Stuart not doing what he was told. A 38-year-old man going red in the face and saying, "I don't wanna," like a mewling little baby. As the wealthy son of a local bigwig, it was an attitude that hadn't been challenged much in his life, but it's not something that works too well against the federal government. Sausage king, my ass. He's a lesser sausage baronet at best. At best. Days after the feds had shut him down, Stuart put a fence across the driveway into the factory and hung a sign on it which read in part, "The USDA is coming into our plant harassing my employees and me, making it impossible to make our great product. Gee, if all meat plants could be in business for 79 years without one complaint, the meat inspectors would not have jobs." You tell him, Stu. Jesus, Jones, who puts G in his, crazy guy rant? The sign also declared he was going to sue the USDA and ask for contributions toward a legal fund. Gross. And he got some money, which is insane to me, but he never filed, of course, because that would require work. In April, Stuart asked to meet with health inspectors and asked if he could reopen on the next Monday if he had all his paperwork and new procedures in place. The inspector said, sure, that's all they'd wanted, but they knew there was no chance of Stuart doing everything necessary over just one weekend. He didn't even try. He'd brought a buddy along to the meeting, and as they left, Stuart said, "I'd like to shoot those guys." In June, he took down the gate and the sign and just started up operations again. Richard Miller owned a print shop across the street and asked Stuart what he was doing. "There was nothing wrong with my product," Stuart said. "Nobody's ever gotten sick, so I just opened up." When Miller asked about the inspectors, Stuart said, "They're not going to step foot in this place. If they do, they're trespassing, and if they don't leave, I'll just shoot the sons of bitches." Wow. The Miller, as people generally don't in these cases, didn't take him seriously. Stuart was a guy who casually said he was going to kill somebody almost on a daily basis. In anticipation of reopening, Stuart had hired a new secretary, a 21-year-old blonde model named Brooke Silverglide, and I think we have to remember that she was very young, because bless her heart, Brooke doesn't come across as the hero in this story, not doing the reputation of blonde models any favors at all. It's a very undeserved reputation, because there are some models who've done some cool shit. Her duties were the normal secretarial ones: answer the phone, buy nice clothes for herself on Stuart's dime, and have lunch with the boss. Over lunch, Stuart suggested he open up some flower shops and let her run them. Obviously, he was hoping to make the relationship a little closer than employer-employee. Stuart already had a girlfriend, Charlotte. When he introduced Brooke to her, Charlotte was like, "Nice to meet you," and immediately memorized the girl's license plate number. She knew who she was dating. Things with Charlotte weren't going so great. She was super mad at him. He talked her into having sex in his office, but she'd made him promise that all the surveillance cameras and stuff weren't running. But as will surprise absolutely no one, it had been running. And afterwards, Stuart showed the tape to his bros. So things with Charlotte were winding down, and he was lining Brooke up as a replacement. But she wasn't biting and may have just been oblivious to his efforts to get her in the sack. As soon as Brooke had started working for him, Stuart had bent her ear about how he was being persecuted by health inspectors who had a personal vendetta against him, and she swallowed it hook, line, and sinker. On Wednesday, June 21st, 4 people arrived at Santos Linguiça to determine if Stuart was making sausages illegally. William Shailene and Earl Willis were local health inspectors, and Jean Hillary and Tom Quandros were compliance officers from the USDA. As usual, Stuart was late coming into work, so Joe the Boner let the inspectors in to look around. When Stuart arrived, Tom Quandros went outside to call the police, asking for help with a potentially irate shop owner. The dispatcher logged this as low priority. Stuart also called the police, ranting about health inspectors trespassing in his factory. The police never arrived in response to either call.
Stuart kept popping out of his office to yell at the inspectors. "Why are you here now? Why are you harassing me and my customer? Get out of my plant. Get off my property." He darted back into the office to grab an Instamatic camera and take all their photos. Shailene and Willis looked awkward in theirs, but Jean Hillary just grinned. Stuart skulked back into his office, and Jean asked Earl Willis to go out to the car and get their own camera. Out there, Tom Quandros told Earl that he'd take the camera in. Earl should wait outside for the police. Brooke Silverglide, outraged on her boss's behalf, marched into his office. "How come they're here again?" she said. "They've got no right to be on your property. They can't come and go anytime they want." They actually certainly can.
They can, honey. They absolutely can. Oy.
She noticed the drawer of Stuart's desk was open. He always kept 3 guns in there. "Can't you fire a warning shot over their heads or something? Like at a ranch?" Brooke said.
What the
Girl,
oh my
what?
God.
Is that like ranch behavior? Like, what are you talking about? Ranch behavior, firing a warning shot over people's heads. Like, what is happening?
Dear God.
Brooke.
Inside, too, where it could ricochet off of any old thing. Lord have mercy, girl.
Her experience is just watching Beverly Hillbillies. Not long after that, Stuart stepped out of his office and shot all 3 inspectors. They all fell. Then he ran outside where Earl Willis was waiting, yelling, "I'm gonna get you." Jesus. Willis turned and ran as Stuart chased him, about 25 feet behind. Stuart shot maybe 4 more times, but missed with each one. Willis was in much better shape than Stuart. He managed to clamber over a fence, tearing a hamstring, and limped away to a nearby bank where someone called 911 and finally got the police moving. Stuart walked back into the factory. He saw that Jean Hillary was still moving. He reloaded his pistols, walked over to her, and shot her in the head. Then he went over to Tom Quandros and William Shailene and did the same to them. All of it was caught on the factory security cameras. Meanwhile, Brooke Silverglide called her boyfriend as soon as the shooting started. Not the police, for some reason. Then she kicked out a window screen to clamber out and run away. Stuart put his guns on the ground and went outside to wait for the cops to come arrest him.
Jean Hillary was 56 years old and had lived in Alameda all her life, where she raised 3 daughters. She was a funny, happy woman who always opened her house to her community on holidays. Hers was the house neighborhood kids went to after school if their own parents weren't home yet. With her kids out of the house now, at 51 years old, she'd gone back to school and earned a bachelor's degree, then trained for 2 years with USDA to be an inspector. When Stuart Alexander murdered her, she'd just gotten her first full paycheck for the job. Tom Quandros was 52, and unlike Jean, was a veteran food inspector. He was patient and generous, the kind of guy that everyone else in the business turned to for advice. At Santos Linguiça, he'd switched places with Earl Willis because he could see that Willis was nervous, and that saved Willis's life. That's the kind of guy Tom was. Bill Shailene was 57, a kind, compassionate man who viewed his job as a serious business that protected people's lives. He was divorced, but spoke to his 16-year-old daughter Megan every day. She was waiting at home for him to call at the moment he was killed. Stuart was arrested without incident, and with the shootings caught on camera, there was no real argument over what had happened. He was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder, with multiple special circumstances making him eligible for the death penalty. His defense tried their best to reduce his culpability, first arguing that the inspectors had been harassing him. Stuart's mom, Shirley, a frosty old broad, has kept tooting that horn, repeating it on a bizarrely sympathetic episode of City Confidential on A&E. If health inspectors tell you to do something and you don't do it, it's not harassment. If they keep coming back, it's their job. The trial also included testimony from Brooke Silverglide, who was tracked down at home on the night of the murders, watching the story on the news, still not having called the police. She described the circumstances of the shootings and said she was still traumatized. In October of 2004, Stuart was found guilty on 3 counts of first-degree murder and 1 of attempted murder. He was sentenced to death, but he wouldn't end up serving much time. In his few years in jail so far, he'd put on 80 pounds and his health had deteriorated rapidly. On December 27, 2005, he was found dead in his cell, having died of a pulmonary embolism. I'm not sure if that felt like justice to his victims' loved ones or if it felt like a cheat. Either way, he's no longer polluting the planet, and I hope that brings them some measure of peace. At Stuart's trial, his defense had tried to argue that Stuart's personality had radically changed after a motorcycle accident in 1997, which caused a head injury and made Stuart more violent and unpredictable. But the medical records only showed a minor concussion. Mama Shirley stuck up for her boy, saying Stuart's personality had changed night and day after the crash. But from what we've seen in the sources we used for this episode, it doesn't sound like that's true. Stuart had anger issues from way back. He was stubborn and arrogant, and it was always his way or no way at all. The KCBS radio podcast The Sausage King interviewed Gordon Galvin, who was a high school buddy of Stuart's, and he remembered Stuart getting into a fight with one guy and whacking him on the head with a baseball bat, making the guy have to have a metal plate in his head for the rest of his life. Another time, Stuart got into an argument with a guy at the beach, after which he set the guy's truck on fire. Okay, that's unhinged. That's unhinged behavior. And Gordon himself wasn't immune. One time, Stuart asked him for a favor. He thought his girlfriend Laura might be cheating on him, so he wanted Gordon to ask her out to see if she said yes, which she did. On their date, Gordon came clean about what Stuart had asked him to do, and Laura told him she'd actually broken up with Stuart and was scared of him. Later on, Stuart went over to Gordon's house and started beating the crap out of him, promising to break his jaw for going out with Laura, only backing off when Gordon grabbed a fire poker and started swinging it at him. All of which to say, Stuart's minor concussion in 1997 did not all of a sudden turn him into a violent piece of shit. He's always been a violent piece of shit. What prompted him to snap like that on a random day in June, I don't know. The combination of his failing relationship and his anger at having to comply with some basic safety regulations at work? Maybe. All I know for sure is he let his grandiose sense of entitlement take him over, and it cost 3 innocent people everything. So, I don't know about you, but I'm glad the Sausage King spent his final days in the dungeon. Now, before we go, don't forget about our 2 amazing live shows coming up. We're so excited. First, we've got Summer Camp, September 10th through 13th, an amazing 4-day festival in Equinunk, Pennsylvania, hosted by Dan and Lindsay Cummins of Time Suck and Scared to Death, 2 amazing podcasts. We'll be performing live alongside them and the podcast Astonishing Legends, in addition to a roster of awesome stand-up comedians and local bands. Go to badmagicproductions.com for more info and to buy tickets. Then we've got our True Crime Cruise, Crime Wave 2.0, February 8th to the 12th, 2027. If you want to come to the Bahamas with us and some of the biggest true crime and paranormal podcasts in the world, like Case File, True Crime Garage, Last Podcast on the Left, and Scared to Death, here's what you got to do. Tickets are on sale now, and they're going fast. So if you want to go, make sure you get over to crimewaveatsea.com/campfire and book your cabin ASAP. You'll get $100 off plus a private meet and greet with us. The great thing is you can pay all at once or set up a payment plan and pay it off over time. So get on it, y'all. That's crimewaveatsea.com/campfire. So that was a wild one, right, campers? We'll have another one for you next week. But for now, lock your doors, light your lights, and stay safe until we get together again around the True Crime Campfire. And as always, we want to send a grateful shout out to a few of our lovely Patreon supporters. Thank you so much to Zatara, Laura D, Laura C, Amy, Becky, and Marilyn. We appreciate y'all to the moon and back. And if you're not yet a patron, you are missing out. Patrons of our show get every episode ad-free, at least a day early, sometimes more, plus tons of extra content, like patrons-only episodes and hilarious post-show discussions. And once you join the $5 and up categories, you get even more cool stuff. A free sticker, a rad enamel pin or fridge magnet while supplies last, virtual events with Katie and me, and we're always looking for new stuff to do for you. So if you can, come join us at patreon.com/truecrimecampfire.
A 24-year-old burning alive inside his own apartment. Police waited outside for 38 minutes. Think about that as a parent. Your son is in there for over half an hour while first responders stay outside the door. Was this an accident? A suicide? Questions linger when the evidence finally comes to the surface. A specific section on both wrists unburned, a clean knife, and a room full of debris as if it could have been placed there after the fire. His death was ruled a suicide before he was officially pronounced dead. Hours earlier, he would tell his parents that if his wife found out he was leaving, she would go ballistic. That's our episode, She'd Go Ballistic, the suspicious death of David Elmquist. This is Crime Salad. We look at the cases where the official story doesn't hold up. We look at the holes in the investigation, and we help families fight for accountability. I'm Ashley.
I'm Ricky.
Search for Crime Salad wherever you listen.
From the parents behind Law & Order comes a mystery the whole family can enjoy. Patrick Picklebottom Everyday Mysteries. Step into the whimsical world of Patrick Picklebottom, a precocious 11-year-old with a love for reading and an uncanny ability to solve mysteries. Inspired by the beloved children's book of the same name, this podcast vividly brings Patrick's tales of deduction and everyday adventures to life as he unravels baffling enigmas and solves clever cases. Patrick Picklebottom Everyday Mysteries is perfect for kids and is just as entertaining for grown-ups who love a good mystery. The whole family can listen now wherever you get your podcasts.